I want to welcome you back to the Marine Corps Theater for those that you have been here, and thank you for attending the conference this week. It's been truly outstanding with some phenomenal leaders on stage and at the theater level as well, not to mention industry displays that are out here. They're tremendous. The title of this session is The Special Sauce, USMC Aviation C2 Innovations Enabling Lethality for Force Design 2030. This is an important topic, and I think it's one you're going to thoroughly enjoy by our speaker, who is Colonel Jeremy Beef Winter, Commanding Officer, Marine Air Control Group 38, 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, located at Miramar, which is just up the road from here. Colonel Winters came to the Marine Corps via the U.S. Naval Academy in 1998 and selected the Marine Corps as his payback tour. He began his career as an aviation command and control officer and has earned command assignments at every rank. I want to tell you what he's done because I think it ties right into the presentation that he's going to have. One of his most interesting command roles was as the commander for Marine Aviation Command and Control Squadron Experimental, or MAX-X, where he was involved in state-of-the-art command and control emerging capabilities. He's also a graduate of the U.S. Navy Top Gun School and was an instructor at the Marine Corps Weapons and Tactics, or WTI course, which he's very proud of. He has participated in 4 combat deployments, so he's got quite a history with him and where he stands right now and where he may be going in the future. I've taken too much of his time this morning, but I want you to understand the essence of his topic that will focus on innovation to enhance the Marine Corps command and control. Welcome, Colonel Winter.
Thanks, Colonel Warlick, for your service, sir, and for the way that you connect the Marine Corps to AFCEA, and for all the things that you do for this august institution. So good morning, everybody. I see some friends in the audience. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about my unit, my community, which in Marine aviation circles, everybody understands is kind of the glue that holds the Marine Air Ground Task Force together. But they only really realize that at about the colonel and general officer level. So really what I want to start with is the man in the arena, right? It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. Anyone who has had the opportunity to command anyone, the privilege to be in charge at any rank, has arrived at a decisive point. That is both an incredibly exciting moment in your life and an incredibly terrifying moment in your life. There are times where the decision that you make will put people in harm's way, that the decision you make is sort of like that Private Ryan moment where they all look at Tom Hanks and they're like, "What now, sir?" And you don't know the answer, but you have to come up with one. But what you find is that there's no shortage of help before you make the decision. Lots of people want to help, but commanders often find themselves in their loneliest moments when the decision has to be made. Everyone sort of steps back as if a bomb is going to go off, and it's you making that decision. And what that commander truly needs from the din of information that they have available to them is timely, concise, and relevant information to make the most thorough decision possible. And while a lot of people talk about command and control, the commander's function, the warfighting function that really is the culmination of all decisions, I think that the way that MCDP 6 talks about command and control, it's the commander's function. The commander finds themselves alone. There aren't experts in command and control. Only the commander who makes the decision maker, understands what is and isn't relevant information, what is timely, and what allows them to be the best version of themselves in the objective area. There's lots of conversation about warfighting functions. Lots of people try to articulate broadly about warfighting functions. And they wax eloquently about individual warfighting functions as if they live in like a stovepipe unto themselves. Not a lot's been really written about how those warfighting functions interact with one another. When I had the privilege of working for Lieutenant General Laurie Reynolds in Headquarters Marine Corps, DCI, we talked about that. As Secretary Mattis brought on board and Lieutenant General Reynolds professionalized the concept of information as a warfighting function. So I want to talk a little bit about information warfighting functions, how it relates to the others. So the information warfighting function is the foundation upon which all other warfighting functions operate. But as you can see by its scope, it's bigger than all of them, which means it's probably messy, it's not real concise. If you were to take my diagram here and turn it in a three-dimensional way, make it a wedding cake, information sits at the bottom. At the very top, in a very, very small cylinder, is command and control, where commanders and the most senior decision makers find themselves. In the middle of that cake are what I like to call the kinetic and dynamic warfighting functions. They're interacting with each other. They're constantly moving. All of those things coalesce to the very top where the commander makes a decision. Now, those of you who were here the other day to hear Lieutenant General George Smith, my Marine Expeditionary Force commander, talk about pacing functions, heard him talk about the fact that in any combat scenario, whether that be in the Pacific or the Atlantic, logistics is the pacing warfighting function, period. Now, so I'm not going to talk about how the other warfighting functions interact with the pacing function. What I'm going to talk about is like the critical function. Lots of conversation goes on about what we do in the arena when we're shooting at people. And I think that Admiral Kaler, the 3rd Fleet commander, said it best the other day where he said, hey, fires and intelligence enable maneuver. I think that's a really fair statement. And so what I would say is that the critical functions during conflict is the nexus between intelligence and fires, be they kinetic or non-kinetic. But we find ourselves in infinitesimal moments where we actually have to shoot real live ordnance at people. We have to win, full stop. But we will spend, as a department, much more time in the competition phase than in the conflict phase. And in my humble opinion, as a C2 professional especially, the nexus of information and command and control is the key to competition. In the observe, orient, decide, and act OODA loop that Colonel John Boyd so eloquently laid out for all of us, our goal is to outpace the enemy's decision cycle, is to turn inside their OODA loop. And in fact, if we establish an information dominance, a decision superiority complex over them, we will keep them stuck in the OO. Every time they observe and attempt to orient, we change the environment. Then they try to observe again and orient. We change the environment one more time. And in an Eastern Bloc, Stalin, Mao type of a framework where there's political inculcation into the military instrument, you can actually start to fracture the trust bond that exists between the intel apparatus and the operators. That's how you win in competition. So, there's the Bloom's taxonomy of learning. In my command, we kind of talk about the taxonomy of military command and control. And I'm going to work from the outside in. My taxonomy assumes that you have an apparatus at echelon that can sense and make sense and act. It might not be decisive action, but you have the ability to act. You have a framework of resilient and redundant networks. Those networks are people, their systems, their processes. But again, command and control is more a framework than a thing. You can't buy a command and control. And so it's a relationship. But the little wedding cake that I posit to you here is how a really effective command and control system can deliver a commander to the decisive point in the modern era. And that is, we take the panoply of data sources that are available to us, and they're just messy. There's a lot of it, but not all of it's relevant. And we have an apparatus that can cull that down, can work through the data and bring sort of a sense of understanding as a piece of information, just a piece. Then that apparatus can work laterally, vertically, human to human, across cyber networks, with those chunks of information and promote them, integrate them, move them higher on the chain of understanding, to provide to the commander a sense of awareness. Now all of a sudden, all of the command and control apparatus and humans, they just fall away. This is now commander space at the very top. We want to deliver to our commanders relevant, timely, and effective data to allow them to make decisions and turn inside of our adversaries' decision cycles. Now, I had the privilege of carrying the Secretary of Defense's orders book. That's a hard job. I'll just say that. Hard. But when I listened to combatant commanders on General Milley's civets talk about competing with adversaries, they were always focused on things, a platform, a thing. The great irony is that I also had an opportunity to witness with 2 carrier strike groups in the CENTCOM AOR, the Iranians, a middleweight in our national defense strategy's priority challengers, launch an audacious and very successful attack against the Aramco petroleum facility in Saudi Arabia. 2 carrier strike groups. It didn't seem to deter them because they did it anyway. And so, not to make this a War College lecture, because I am in no way, shape, or form the guy who should be talking about War College stuff. I'm a weapons and tactics instructor. I am not a MAGTF planner or a super O-plan guy. But I'd like to achieve the acme of skill. I'd like to present a network, a framework, a web of decision superiority at echelon and present adversaries with that. I can outcycle you. There isn't anything you can do that can break my chains because they're an interlocked web. Now, I actually did a lot of research before I put this slide up here, watching, YouTube videos and listening to strategists talk, and I couldn't find a definition of a kill web. The only person I really hear talk about kill webs is my commandant. And so I listened a lot to General Berger, and I'm not offering a doctrinal definition. The people from the Joint Staff shouldn't come looking for me to get a definition for, the Joint Dictionary. But as a guy who closes kinetic kill chains and creates a web of those chains so that Marine and Naval Force commanders can gain and maintain custody of targets and engage those targets at the place and the time of their choosing, I offer that that's at least a start. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is how a Marine Air Control Group, the Marine Air Command and Control System, is really, has been, and will be into the future, the special sauce that holds the Marine Air Ground Task Force together. I'm going to talk to you about how the naval force is benefiting from the type of organization that I have the humble privilege to lead. And I'm going to talk to you about how, while force design didn't really plan aviation into the Marine Littoral Regiment, they have arrived upon the coup d'oeil that only our commandant could deliver, which is they created more of this special sauce stuff inside of the MLR, where you don't have to have the airplanes. You just need to maximize the capability to outcycle your enemy and put those airplanes and aviation capabilities and the fires and all of the airspace stuff and then connect them to non-kinetics that our commanders need to outcycle in competition so we never fire a shot. But I'm going to start because there are people in this room that probably don't know what a Marine Air Control Group does or what the Marine Air Command and Control System does, and talk about our proud roots. We are actually formed from the Marine Defense Battalions. That is one of the proudest things I can ever reach back into our history and find, because these are the Montford Point Marines. This is the initial cadre of black Marines who came into our Corps and who were deployed into the archipelagic regions of the Pacific as deterrence as a function of War Plan Orange, if you know what that is. That was our original design to deter the Empire of Japan. We all know what happened on December 7th, 1941, but on December 8th, 1941, the same armada that attacked Pearl Harbor went after Midway. And so an organization that had to learn to be integrated at the human level, and in full honesty, the leadership were all white and most of the operators were black Marines, but it kind of doesn't matter when the bad guy's shooting at you. They learned to love each other, to live together, and to fight hard. They took artillery cannons, and they found flak shells to shoot surface to air, artillery shells to shoot surface to surface, both against maritime targets and then against the Japanese who landed on their shores. They integrated radars and wireless communication systems, which we now know are radios, and they defended Midway for 30 days. Pretty proud of that. Later on in World War II, technology would have advanced significantly, and if you think about Operation Iceberg and landing on Okinawa, we had 4 air control squadrons that managed the airspace over the top of Okinawa tied to the ground and maritime surface maneuver, integrating fires, airplanes, and a variety of other activities to take that island in the Marine Corps' bloodiest battle. Fast forward to sort of the hippie years, if you will, in both Korea and Vietnam, the Marine Air Command and Control System took innovative technologies and tried to find ways to plug and play those things to create systems. The air support radar teams introduced the first precision close air support dynamic to the Marine Corps and the Joint Force, allowing us to strike day and night against the North Koreans. And in Vietnam, that is a beautiful weapon system, isn't it? Right? That was the first thing I ever did in the Marine Corps. That is the Hawk weapon system. Integrating that thing with wired and wireless data links, working very closely with aircraft commanders and the ground schema maneuver to place that mobile surface-to-air weapon system at the right place to provide Marine aviation the air superiority that it required to deliver effective close air support. And then finally, you fast forward to today. You talk about pitched battles in Iraq that we will etch into the history we already have etched into the history of the Marine Corps. Fallujah, and I had the privilege of building the air plan over Fallujah with now Lieutenant General Chris Mahoney. Fallujah was not possible without the Direct Air Support Center. We basically put a big circle around Fallujah and said, we welcome all comers, you just have to check in with the DASC. And they integrated fires, airspace, maneuver, intelligence, all activities inside of a 4-mile by 4-mile operations area in order to focus the effects of all of our warfighting functions on the adversary. We were so effective in the long war that, in fact, for Afghanistan, when the SDOB was written for this picture to occur right here, the Air Force said, I tell you what, Marine Corps, all we want is your TAOC, and we'll let you run all of Afghanistan. And so a Marine Air Command and Control unit with a big radar managed medivacs, fire support coordination, ground force maneuver, resupply, and even on the Iranian border, anti-air warfare, with AV-8Bs and F-18s carrying air-to-air weapons and flying combat air patrol. Today, I can't be any prouder of the organization that I'm in charge of. You can see there up in the top left corner, the Marine Air Defense Integrated System, the MADIS, and the Marines of 3rd LAD Battalion, who integrated with USS Boxer for the only surface-to-air kill in Marine Corps history, which was non-kinetic against an Iranian drone. On the top right-hand corner, those are Marine Air Traffic Controllers and Special Operators at Kabul, with a variety of communications devices up to and including chat protocols that went right into the chairman's crisis action team in the Pentagon. Marine Air Traffic Controllers are wholly responsible for air movements into and out of both civilian and military Kabul International Airport. In the bottom left, from about 2 weeks ago, Marine Air Control Group 38 embarked the Common Aviation Command and Control System and the ANTPS-80 radar on amphibious connectors and amphibiously assaulted from USS Macon Island a full air command and control capability in support of 5th-generation maritime strikes in the Pacific. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, our proud moment, Lieutenant Colonel James Arnold became the commander of the 3rd Littoral Anti-Air Battalion, the first unit in the Commandant's Marine Littoral Regiment, and an Aviation C2 unit. What are Marine Air Control Groups? There's one per Marine Expeditionary Force, there's one per wing. There's 4 of us, MACG 18 in Okinawa, 28s in Cherry Point. I work at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, and MACG 48, our reserve control group, they live in Chicago. This is how we're built. We live in an air wing, but I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, we are nothing but a MEF-level asset. A Marine Air Support Squadron, that's what the flag says, they deploy the Direct Air Support Center, tasked with supporting a Marine division in the ground scheme of maneuver with all of the air support they'll ever need, from close air support, medevac, resupply, maneuver, you name it. The LAD Battalion, they provide a ground-based air defense capability currently, and I'll talk about some of the weapon systems later, with the Stinger missile. I mean, it got the Russians out of Afghanistan. It's still a scary weapon, but there's a bright future for that community ahead. The MAX, the Marine Air Control Squadron, radar-based air defense and air traffic control. Expeditionary on the spot. Our Marine Wing Communications Squadron, resilient, redundant, multi-path, multi-spectrum communications, data networks that allow us to work with international partners, the Joint Force, and interoperate within the MAGTF and naval environment. And then the TAC, the Command Center for the Wing CG. Now, that used to be a squadron. Force Design has realigned that, so I am now the person in charge of the TAC, but I have a pipe hitter of a major in Catherine James who runs our command center for 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing. That is a JFAC capable, one of only 3 services that can serve as the JFAC. That is a JFAC capable command post that I can distribute at the wing or a Marine Aircraft Group level. The weapon systems that we field, the Common Aviation Command and Control System, the decision engine, frankly, for the Marine Air Ground Task Force and the Naval Force. And I'll get to that in a subsequent slide and show you how that all lays out. The ANTPS-80 Gator radar, probably the most, if I'm to describe a weapon system as sexy, the TPS-80 is the coolest, sexiest thing that we have. The artillery regiments have it, the aviation groups have it, and we can employ and deploy these things in a variety of different modes down to find low observable targets, to provide persistent sensing, and we can set them up and turn them down in minutes. We also have an expeditionary air traffic control capability, so we can find a stretch of dirt anywhere in the world and turn it into an IFR-capable airport. Our gladiators, as I like to call them, right? They are the grunts of the wing, if you will. But you can see there, right? It's not a Stinger missile if there isn't someone next to it pointing into the sky. It just is. That's the picture of the Stinger missile. But what's next to them is the MADIS system. So they can conduct kinetic and non-kinetic kills against UAS, manned aircraft, helicopters, and other air vehicles operating inside of a bubble of about 15,000 feet and below. Lots of new capabilities coming for these guys in the future. And then finally, our comm squadron. I can't fill the little bubble with all the cool things that our communication squadron has. But they have large transport, small transport, very expeditionary. You can see right there that Marine who's on, that is a picture from about 3 days ago on San Clemente Island. And that's a multi-mission terminal right there. Not a plug for Viasat. That's just where, they smart enough to print it on the front. But I mean, literally, we can go at scale with the scope and whatever echelon of command and control system the Marine or the Naval Force commander asks us to deploy. What's really cool is this. So we've always done this MAX thing, this MACG thing, but this is new, and our commandant tips his hat a little bit towards how he expects to persist inside the WES and compete against our adversary. So this is what the MLR, as it's called, is made of. A lot of people don't know this, so I figured this is important to kind of run through this. On the left-hand side, you see the Littoral Combat Team, and for all intents and purposes, that is a Special Purpose MAGTF or Marine Expeditionary Force Battalion Landing Team, with one unique and exquisite exception. GBASM, or the system we call Nemesis. Ostensibly, to speak in the vernacular of the Naval Institute-sponsored organization, it's a harpoon shot from the ground. It's an anti-ship missile. It's pretty darn sexy. On the right-hand side is exactly what you would expect to find, a combat logistics battalion, capable of standing in, providing sustainment and support for a very distributed unit. Not depicted on my slide are some very, very special people that work in the headquarters of the MLR, space, cyber, special intelligence folks that allow this organization in the TS space to really do some exquisite things. But in the middle, the lab, the Littoral Anti-Air Battalion. It is a composite of the Marine Air Control Group and what we in the wing call the Marine Wing Support Squadron. It has an air command and control capability. The TPS-80 and the CAC-2S go out in support of early warning platoon operations. They can command and control limited volumes of airspace. An air support platoon that would tie themselves to a ground force commander or a maritime maneuver force commander to understand fire support integration, logistics, I said fires, intelligence, and maneuver. In the middle, it doesn't say LMATIS, it says MATIS. So imagine a JLTV bristling with a 30 millimeter gun, Stinger box launcher, pretty awesome capability. Then we're going to start fielding those in probably 2 years. And then the ability to arm and refuel aircraft forward. Now this is lean. This is very, very lean. But what we have done, with what I'm going to talk about in the next slide, is provide a coherent concept of employment for this. This was delivered by Headquarters Marine Corps, for all intents and purposes, to us in the fleet as a line and wire diagram. But the concept of employment was a little opaque. How would you do that in an old era where you have these command centers in the rear? Think air-land battle. Most of the people that are sitting here in front of me grew up in that world. The command centers are in the back. For us, the TAOC, these air defense agencies, are kind of in the middle. And the Direct Air Support Center was forward with the division. My commanding general, Major General Brad Gehring, he's just an exquisite thinker. And I don't say that because he writes my fitness report. It's just, he thinks really unique things. And I'm just a student of that officer. He says that in the modern battle space, it's not linear, it's almost spherical, where there's just this three-dimensional, all-domain sphere that just lives around a commander, and it complicates his or her decision space. So we needed to find a way, a concept of employment, to allow this organization to fight in all domains, but to nest within the larger air command and control environment, rooted in things like JP 330, the JFAC publication, JP 352, airspace control, the data link environment, in order to allow a broader and more robust web of decision superiority to sense, make sense, and act and be lethal where we want to be. And that's this. So at the root of the transformation of the Marine Air Control Groups is this thing called the MAOC. Now, when I was at Max X, working for then Major Malak, who is now a Brigadier General and my mentor, we developed this concept to match the capabilities production document, the intent of the Common Aviation Command and Control System, to coalesce the Direct Air Support Center and the Tactical Air Operations Center, to allow them to sense and make sense, but to deliver to the Joint Force Commander and everyone underneath them high-quality, targetable tracks. Vice Admiral Mers, who's the OpNav N3 and 5, he calls it track warfare. Well, I've lived that my whole life as an air and missile defender, and the idea was to bring that thing which delivers dynamic capability to our divisions, the DASC, to the 21st century. We delivered this in WTI, our Weapons and Tactics course in Yuma in 2012. It entered the Marine Corps Aviation Plan in 2015. It took a bit of a hiatus, but General Gehring and I are not stopping now. And as a matter of fact, when we get to Valiant Shield this summer, we will fill the Pacific Ocean with these. Now you can see on the bottom right-hand corner there, it comes in echelons. It's not just this titanic thing that requires a lot of logistics. The Marine Air Command and Control System works at scale, at echelon, in order to integrate and support a commander at any echelon, at any level, really. So the TACE, that's a tactical air control element. For those who speak Marine Air Command and Control, think an early warning and control detachment or an air support element. An echelon, a maneuvering element, or a task-organized, specifically functioned capability set that is deployed to a place and the time that the commander needs it to operate in a limited scope and function and just be real dynamic and move. And then a variety of aviation command and control teams, from the deployment and employment of a sensor to get involved in a sensor network. For the Navy people here, it's the CEC environment to do composite tracking. It can be a liaison of one, and that's all you need. You just need to have one person there, and it can scale any way, really, the commander needs it to. I wouldn't be a former Joint Staff Officer without throwing a placemat on your desk, right? Okay? But this is Steel Night. And again, if you heard General Smith talk the other day, he gave great shout out to MACG 38 and all the professionals, those young kids doing great work. But this is what it looked like at the unclass and non-CUI level. What we did was we deployed and employed a Marine Air Command and Control System to support 1st Marine Division and Expeditionary Strike Group 3, to allow Comfibron 7 and the commander of 5th Marine Regiment to conduct seed denial and control operations off the coast of California. We deployed 5th Marine Regiment to Fort Hunter Liggett because 5th Marine Regiment is going forward to Darwin, Australia to serve as the Marine Rotational Force Darwin Command Element. And the goal was to see if, with multi-star commanders over the top of these two 06 leadership staffs, could we give them the decision superiority required to engage targets? Now, at this level of classification, this was aggressed. I'm just going to go there. Aggressed in a variety of domains, and I won't go any farther in that conversation. But we integrated with the MEF Information Group, and a variety of other entities in both the Joint and the Naval Force to deliver target quality tracks to both the FIBRON commander and the 5th Marines commander. We were able to engage in 5th generation strikes against maritime surface targets. We actually had our HMLAs, so our Cobras and Hueys, hunting submarines. If you look, I think it's the Naval Institute that carried it the most on the interwebs. There are 2 Cobras flying next to a Virginia-class submarine. They didn't come upon that thing by accident. And they were talking to an SH-60 Romeo that engaged in multiple constructive kills of that submarine because of a hunter-killer pairing of Cobras and 60s. All enabled through a resilient and redundant network that included Link 16, the Mesh Network Manager on the MV-22s, a variety of satellite and terrestrial communication devices, and all linked together through the Marine on the radio, talking to the aircraft, talking to the shooter, and making sure that the F2, T2, EA cycle, including the A, was passed back to the commander of 1st Marine Division or the commander of ESG-3, depending on who had target engagement authority at the time. And we did that with our own equipment today. Lots of conversation about force design, that we have to buy our way out of the situation that we're in. You can't do force design if you don't buy a thing. I know I'm talking a lot of industry people here. I'm interested in what you have to sell me, but what I'm also here to tell you as American patriots is that short of a couple exquisite capabilities, I can do it now. And 1MEF will continue to do that into this summer. Well, we just concluded Winter Fury. There are LCACs moving my people back from San Clemente as we speak. And we will continue to refine these TTPs and write them into the O plan because the enemy determines when we transition from competition to conflict, normally not us. There are lots of great opportunities too. There are conversations in a variety of the hallways of the Pentagon about moving the weapon systems out of the ground combat element portion of the MLR and into the lab. When you think about things like dual mode, long range, surface to air, surface to surface weapons, those are deep fires. The Marine Division does not normally have the cognitive dynamics in their planning cycles to think about the deep fight like we do in aviation. Frankly, the MLR didn't really come with a, how does marine aviation, flying aviation, interoperate with these guys? Other than, well, there's a FARP. I mean, you can land and get gas, but the Sunoco model of command and control isn't exactly what we wanted. By introducing MAOC to the lab, we have given the Marine Littoral Regiment commander now a coupler to connect to the broader Marine Air Command and Control System, which thusly allows them to connect to the Joint Forces' entire air component. And we can generate air tasking orders that generate tempo and mass and effect where that MLR commander needs it. The Air Force Weapons School continues to come to my command, to visit us, because they, as a part of the ABMS, Air Battle Management System, modernization, which is really equipment-centric, they're trying to figure out what is the broader reconstruction of the Air Force TACS, the Theater Air Control System, AWACS, JSTARS, CRCs. They are using MAOC as the model. So for us, we find this as a prescient moment in military history for air command and control writ large, because we have a coherence now. The stand-in force, the broader enterprise, where the Marine Corps and the Air Force, as JFAC participants, are now moving in similar, parallel, not the same, because the Air Force has different missions it has to fly, direction. And then if you ever go aboard an L-class ship that's compliant, capable of flying F-35s, you'll find CAC-2S aboard that ship as well. So now we are nested in the naval force, the joint force. And I can't say enough about my majors. You know, major is like the hardest rank in the military, bar none. Right? The worst ranks wear gold. I'm convinced that the first star that a general officer puts on should be gold, because that's hard too. Haven't worked for a few. But my majors, through the Distributed Mission Operations Center in Kirtland Air Force Base and the exquisite work of the 505th Training Wing, we are doing PhD level naval integration for composite warfare. A bunch of field grade officers, weapons officers, tacticians are working contracts for entire groups of JSTARS to do counter-maritime operations. How can we do 5th gen HMLA, think Cobras and Hueys, AWACS, JSTARS, and Aegis integration to find, fix, and destroy a maritime target. Potentially not a military maritime target, but one that's masquerading as something else. So we're actually looking at what are the command arrangements, command and control dynamics, and contracts that have to exist that we're literally writing right into the pages of the O plan. Couldn't be more proud. And it's all done in a virtual environment. So we can actually take that tech company dynamic and go, hey, we want to fail fast here. Because you can refly it and refly it and refly it until you get it right. And that's what they're doing. They're there long hours. It's brutal work. But it's amazing. And we're changing the face of warfare. This is probably, for me, as the group commander, the biggest strategic initiative in the evolution of Aviation C2. And it is the coalescence of the MEF information groups and the Marine Air Control groups. The MEF information groups, conceived by, really led by an OPT, there's a man named Dennis Corral. He's sort of important. He's not only an Air Command and Control Officer, to which I take great pride, but he is our Joint Staff J6, and Lieutenant General Corral is the lead for JADC2 in DOD. He created MEF information groups to provide that all-domain intel piece that nests with the command and control dynamic that we already had in the MACGs. Colonel Kevin Root and I, we deploy and employ units together at different echelons. Not the Titanic MEF level capability. We're talking multi-domain effects teams that bring SCIF level capabilities, bolt themselves onto air command and control units, and they are either creating or amplifying the high quality tracks that our system already produces in the battle space at different echelons. And you can literally have a team of about 8 people work with a commander either aboard a ship or on the land to be able to create super high quality targets that you can engage at the time of your choosing, or that you can simply hold at risk and maneuver, keep the enemy stuck in the ooh, but you can keep reminding them through some of the exquisite capabilities that the MiG has, you have them. Little bullseye on you. This is really awesome. I'll be interested what your questions are in the Q&A. There's some classification challenges here, but I'll try to get through them. And I need one network. One global, always on, always censored, MAR4 cyber, secure, operate, and defended network. The Marine Corps Enterprise Network. Not a series of, hey, we're going to get to the island and then we're going to build a network when we get there. You will never be able to be there long enough or persist long enough to build that network in the old way. You need to arrive with the capabilities that you need and then fight with them. And then if you have to, scavenge for transport back to higher echelons to pull forward the data that you need. I posit to everybody in this crowd, data in the 21st century is like fuel. And General Milley used to say that data is the fuel for decisions. I like it. I like that. Not just because it's General Milley saying it, but because it makes a lot of sense. It's just like gas. There are puddles, ponds, lakes, and oceans of data. We want to flow information forward to the tactical edge so that we are sure, unequivocally sure, that the commander at the edge has exactly the information refined, concise, relevant, and timely that they need. I need to be able to do that with one email address. Anybody who's ever gone on board ship, you have your USMC.mil, and then you go on the ship, and then there's this like 150 character long new email address you have, and then you get off the ship, and then you get like a mail.mil account, and then you finally build up your servers, and there are 4 emails. The commander can't wait to have the target package in the wrong email address. We want one flat network. And when we think about reachback capabilities like processing, exploitation, and dissemination, the venerable knife, all of those capabilities require us to push information forward. Enough about this enterprise IT thing. Let's talk about warfighting IT. I'm super proud that Marine Wing Comm Squadron 38 is going to execute the first service pilot of the deployed McSen at this upcoming Weapons and Tactics Instructor course. In fact, for those of you who are taking notes, let me tell you what, if you come to WTI, you're going to find. Marine Air Control Group 38 will deploy and employ the first Littoral anti-air battalion in Marine Corps history. Lieutenant Colonel Jason Urisic, the commanding officer of 3rd LAD Battalion, will bring a lab to WTI. to test out force design concepts, determine how our training apparatus can sustain and maintain readiness for a littoral anti-air battalion, and if I have to deploy capabilities that mirror that into the future, obviously certify that capability. We will deploy and employ multifunction air operation centers across the WTI AOR, and we will do all of that on the deployed McSen. What can you do for me? What keeps me up at night? If I'm talking to industry, these are the things I'm hoping for. And I just binned them. Persistence. Help me survive. What keeps me up at night? Not dying. That's it. I just don't want to die. Like, I'll start with that, and everything else is kind of gravy. But realistically, if I were a mom and pop, I would try to figure out a way to create an S-band decoy. Lots of TPS-80 radars, lots of S-band antennas out there. What I don't have is the ability to maneuver under any EMS umbrella. I'm just going to be a giant harm target, a giant DF-21 target. I need the ability to maneuver in spectrum. I need to be able to see in spectrum. So whether it's little UAVs that allow me to see in spectrum or a C2 system that allows me to do that at scale and not exquisite capabilities, try to deliver that to us. Give that to McWill. Come talk to me afterwards. We'll integrate you in an exercise. That's cool. I am a MOTS 1 instructor. There is an ADT&E department, Aviation Development, Tactics, and Evaluation department at MOTS 1. And between them and VMX1, we can find a way to integrate you into an exercise. Help me kill cruise missiles. The medium range intercept capability is a validated requirement, and I'd love to get out on the range and see somebody kill some cruise missiles. Additionally, all this stuff takes a lot of power. And right now there are cars in the parking lot with more expeditionary energy capability than anything anybody's fielded to the Marine Corps that doesn't require a tractor trailer. There are a lot of opportunities there. I call it Link 45 in the resilience category. I just made it up. Somebody threw a dart, right? I mean, where did the 38th parallel come from? Like, some dude in the Pentagon just drew a line on the map. That's really how it happened, right? So, but DARPA has a thing called stitches. I just need a data link, a killing quality data link that pulls in all of the other data links. I don't need a new one that replaces. I just need one that brings them all together. I'm not a requirements guy. I just want it to work, right? Sort of a Steve Jobs approach to this thing. Just make it work. Because everybody's trying to get me on the new train. 5G is tactical transport, like literally. Why can't our comm squadrons just deploy and employ 5G towers, and I can live inside the noise dynamic, and everybody can have an iPad? I mean, it seems like Ender's Gamey, but it's not a panacea. There's a lot of other organizations in the DoD, specifically in SOCOM, that do this now. But why aren't we doing this at the enterprise level? And aerial extensions and gateways, right? The Marine Aerial Network Gateway Layer, the Mangle, Sky Tower, an ability to create attritable, persistent aerial transport that allows us to, again, build the web, enable decision superiority, not have one link that's destroyable. And autonomy, put me out of business. You want to make a compelling argument to the director of P&R, Lieutenant General Mahoney, show him manpower savings. Show him you can make whole units go away. Now, I'm not an idiot. I know what AI can and cannot do. But at the same time, get those manual processes off of the fingerprints of young lance corporals and lieutenants, automate those things, put me on the loop, and squeeze together that sensor to shooter link so we can be timely and effective and present an insurmountable amount of decision capability and lethality to the enemy. And finally, we are not going to fly humans in airplanes for much longer. If you want to be really far out in front, control swarms of things. Figure out a common language that allows me to talk to swarms of UAVs, UUVs, UGVs, loitering munitions, to bring mass to bear against the enemy. And a controller won't control a human in an airplane. They're just simply going to make aerial vehicles or ground vehicles do their thing. That's what I hope you can do for me. It's kind of a challenge. I promise you, somebody out there is asking in your mind because you've worked in requirements. So it's, where's the requirement? Hey, I'm in the fleet right now, so I don't have to write requirements, okay? Actually, I do. But right now, our keen focus is the .mlpfp to transform a Marine Air Command and Control System, which now extends into the stand-in forces Marine Littoral Regiment, to deliver what we have over history: timely, relevant, lethal, and effective decision superiority over our adversaries, such that we break their will to resist us and defeat them without fighting. So, your War College lecture is complete. I'm interested in hearing questions from the audience.
Hey, sir, great brief. Don Klein, former naval aviation guy. So 2 questions for you. One, could you speak a little bit about how you disaggregate your unit to be in multiple locations in an EABO low-key construct? And then 2, how do you pull in sensors from like non-traditional areas such as MADOS for force protection? You mentioned undersea warfare to start pulling in, again, kind of a non-traditional sensor, but it's still very relevant to your overall mission. Thanks very much.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thanks. And I heard yesterday when you were, or 2 days ago when you were talking to General Smith, you're a P-8 guy. So, my wingman in the Pentagon was a P-8 guy, and I hunted the Severodvinsk for a while I was working for General Dunford. So let me start with submarines and non-traditional weapon systems first. So the Common Aviation Command and Control System was built to not really just ingest proprietary sort of standard military links. First, radars. Think anywhere we go in the world, there are standards in air traffic control radars, asterisk CD2, that we've already purpose-built into our system. So it doesn't take very much for us to pull an air traffic control radar or a network of those radars into our system. I don't know what MADOS is, so you're going to have to...
It's a Marine Corps force protection sensor system, basically to be deployable to provide force protection for ground forces.
Okay.
MA-DOSS is the name of the system.
So if I had the privilege of being up at to talk to Chris Brose with General Smith not too long ago, right? And so if I make a corollary that maybe you'll get, there's just a little bit of a language translator that needs to be built in order to come into the central C2 system, right? And he showed us all of that. But there's always a middleware, there's always a gadget, there's always a device. CAC2S lives in J-series messages, K-series messages, the MIL standards, that we all know and love. So as long as whatever the system is can translate that high quality track as a K or J series message, I can process that and then I can forward it, which is really the beauty of it all, in another link. How do I disaggregate? So I showed you, I'm not going to kill everybody by going back through slides, but I showed you we have different deploy and employ concepts. I am never, like when I go, I am more like an infantry or an artillery regiment commander than I am an infantry commander. As soon as the Marine Air Command and Control System goes into battery and people just start going places, I don't have a job anymore. The beauty of my organization, and I'm so proud of our young combat leaders, is that we are a group led by a colonel, squadrons led by lieutenant colonels, but then when we become agencies, we are captains and majors and gunnies and master sergeants, and it hands off the controls. And I have captains that are absolutely unwavering in calling the 3-star CFAC headquarters because that's their job. So we're actually built to disaggregate, enabled by not only CAC2S, which is kind of a truck-based, tent-based organization, but the small form factor of CAC2S, which for us is about the size of this podium, little R2-D2 type unit in total factor. We're able to echelon way below the agency.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, sir. Appreciate it.
Morning, sir. Mike Winters, Mission Analytics, no relation. So you talked a lot about C2, and I come from the Air Force side. In fact, we were both in Battle of Fallujah. I was commanding the tankers from Al Dhafra. And our C2 in the Air Force was derived essentially from our separation from the Army back in World War II, unity of command, decentralized execution, but it's an air enterprise led by air leaders. We get our technology from the C2, C4I community, but what it is. So I'm an East Coaster, so as I head down to Quantico and talk to Marine Systems Command, find out that Marine Aviation C2 is a ground enterprise. and that's the way you described it. Yet, and I was pleased to see that you're saying, hey, maybe air needs to move a little bit away, extend a little forward. So I wondered if you want to talk a little more doctrinally about whether, because it's a ground command and a marine command, whether air can exist separately, or is it kind of constrained by basically the basic functions of the Marine Corps?
I will caveat this with, I have gone to war college at everywhere but a Marine Corps institution. But I am a MAGTF officer. The reason why the soldiers from the sea have their own Air Force is because they have to be able to persist in expeditionary environments where there is no Air Force. And our stand-in force is a classic example. Now, first of all, I am a humongous fan of General Goldfein and an even bigger fan of General Brown. And what I would say, first off, is General Brown, he's an innovator in a variety of different ways. I mean, just his picture changes the landscape of the United States Air Force. More importantly, General Brown changed the philosophy of command and control for the United States Air Force. Centralized command, centralized control, and decentralized execution was the old mantra, tied to air-land battle, and almost an arrogant perspective that we will always have air dominance. When we focus on the Pacific, General Brown changed that to become centralized command, distributed control, and decentralized execution. For us, under the Marine Air Command and Control System, the tenet of command and control that Marine Corps aviators and ground combat officers abide by is centralized command, decentralized control. There is now a coherence, and I think it's because our Commandant and General Brown spent a lot of time together. So we would never extricate the aviation combat element from the rest of the Marine Corps. And in fact, I would posit, and this is my opinion, so I don't speak on behalf of the United States Marine Corps, the ground combat element is the least capable organization to serve as the stand-in force headquarters. I believe my commanding general is the most well-equipped officer in 1MEF right now to serve as the commander for stand-in forces, because we can generate mass from multiple locations. It does take 7 consecutive miracles to take off on time. There's a tanker, there's a C2, there's a this, but that's called the ATO process. I have a major running that. She graduated from the finest undergraduate institution in America. She is a Naval Academy graduate, but I mean, she is exquisitely detailed in the way that she runs the processes in the system to generate an ATO. So now that General Smith has sort of fractured the old JFAC super paradigm, we have the ability to have conversations with our Air Force counterparts that extend beyond just the CAOC as this monolithic decision engine for aviation. In the air defense world, and I spent my time during Iraqi freedom shooting ballistic missiles out of the sky, there's a SADC, a Sector Air Defense Commander. We delegate those authorities from a multi-star general down to a lieutenant colonel or a colonel. We need to be more agile within the Joint Force to talk about a Sector Airspace Control Authority, a Sector JFAC, because the distances in the Pacific are so great, and the potential for us to find Air Force F-35As, Marine Corps F-35Bs, MV-22s, and Air Force multi-domain, MDTFs, multi-domain task force folks, Army, all on the same base. There's a pretty high probability we're gonna find that. Now, I can have that Marine Air Command and Control System node creating the ATO, working the airspace for those hypersonic intercepts, the whole thing. So because the MAX is kind of one corpus, it's a brain, it is in and of itself, that network of decision superiority I put up on the screen, I think that the parallel tracks that we currently have with the ABMS crowd, with the Air Force Taxi 2 people, is going to provide a level of resiliency that our FOGO leadership haven't seen really since World War II. I hope that answers your question. I think we probably have one more, sir. Yeah.
Thank you. Jeff Schogel with Task and Purpose. You mentioned a type of unit called the MADIS, M-A-D-I-S. Is that a tribute to General Mattis?
No, Jeff. And by the way, you and I have worked in circles in right outside the chairman's corridor many times, so thank you for what you do.
Oh,
So MADIS the Marine Air Defense Integrated System. That's what they call it. We're always trying to figure out what do we want to actually call the thing, and then we invent acronyms. My humble opinion, that's why they did it. But I think more importantly, the LAD, Low Altitude Air Defense community, they have been traditionally, since really Vietnam, known for being red-eye and stinger shooters. Those are sort of pencils that you throw into the sky. The adversaries we're going to face, they bring some capabilities with them, whether that's onboard jamming, sword and shield capabilities, hypersonic ballistic missiles, you name it. That community is transforming. And I think they wanted to really create a name that served as the foundation for what will be a family of systems that comes up on top of that. So the integrated system part, Marine Air Defense Integrated System, I mean, it's a truck with stingers and a gun. But it's the brain. Again, back to decision superiority and networks and kill webs. We have that medium range intercept capability, trying to kill cruise missiles and fighter-sized targets. Obviously, you can kill a bomber-sized target if you can kill a fighter-sized target. But then there are experiments going on, the Desert Ship, Project Convergence, Project Overmatch, to potentially bring the SM-6 onto land. Now all of a sudden these LAD battalions start to go back to the Marine Air Defense Battalion, the Marine Defense Battalion that I showed in the first picture. They have a surface-to-surface long-range precision fires capability coincident with a surface-to-air capability. So MADIS is the first step in an echeloning capability set of air defense systems yet to come. All right, well, I appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you very much. Thanks again to Colonel Warlick, and shout out to a lifelong mentor of mine, Lieutenant General Dave Beidler. Thanks.